Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the sports betting show brought to you by a former statistics professor. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and with me, as always, for college football, my actual cousin Jared. We are here for week 9 of the 2025 college football season. We passed the halfway mark, Cousin Jared, so we are in it now.
Yeah, and part of me is like, how is it already this far into the season? But the other part of me is like, I have lived at least 9 lives during this college football season just because of all of the crazy off the wall, I don't want to say unprecedented, but very rare things that have happened. It's just been a crazy season, even though it feels as if it has gone by fairly quickly.
Yeah, I kind of feel like my 9 lives are up at this point. Last week, the A grades bounced back up 2 units after just, again, a bonkers, terrible, weird week 7. The picks that we gave out exclusively to our supporters over on Patreon turned a little profit. Couldn't quite get there with our show picks. Cousin Jared, we seemingly talk about it every week. And at some point, I feel like it's one of those, is it us? Because week after week, I feel like we continue to have losses that confound me, more losses that confound me than wins that I'm like, oh man, we really got lucky there. We've had a few of those for sure. We like to be realistic about that. The one I wanted to point out, we passed on Ole Miss plus 6.5 against Georgia. We said, hey, it got to 7. That made it a worthwhile investment. Ole Miss is up 9 in the fourth quarter and somehow loses by 8. And I'm like, how did these things happen? You know, and at some point I'm like, what are we missing?
Yeah.
To continue to have these sort of results.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about it a lot too, but I know it's been out there for a couple of weeks now. You know, S&P Plus, the top 20 teams, 10 years ago were separated by 2 touchdowns, and now they're separated by 1 touchdown. I haven't looked at this season, so I don't know the answer to it, and maybe you do, but I wonder if all of the models that are, widely available and tracked, if the average error is higher this year. Because it seems to me like we've just had more results where it's just almost, we make this joke all the time. It's like, if you were getting, 25 points with Texas against, excuse me, if you were getting, 14 points with Oklahoma against Texas, you're like, of course I'm always going to take the 14 points. And then they still wouldn't have covered it. I feel like there's been lots of results like that this season where you could have thrown out some crazy, ridiculous line and you still wouldn't have covered just because the results have been so odd. So, and that may just be a result of more parity, or it could just be a bigger result. I don't know what all the other things going on in college football, but yes, it does feel like there have been more odd and weird results this season than I can remember in any other season that we've been doing this.
This might be not entertaining television for the follow-up for you for that, Cousin Jared, but you mentioned the mean absolute error, something we talk about, how well is the model doing 2 years ago. Over 800 games, a sidelines average absolute error was 12.6. Last year it was 12.8. This year so far, 12.4.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So see, this is why I really need to look into these things before I say anything.
It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
But it has been weird. Cousin Jared, we want to quickly touch on something from last week here, but we want to get to the week 9 slate. 2 coaches, though, already fired. We're recording this on Sunday night. One of them, Billy Napier at Florida, and there were some rumors that were floating around. But Cousin Jared, props to you, because I think you literally mentioned last week's show. I don't know if it was the main show or the after show. Either one. I remember you talking about it. You were like, he might be gone. It wouldn't be the first time a team has beaten Mississippi State, and they fired their coach anyway. I don't remember what example. You gave an example. Sure enough, Florida barely
Texas
wins.
A&M and Jimbo Fisher.
There
Yeah.
you go. Okay, so you were given that example, and sure enough, it happened here. Was it predetermined, or did the result matter? Had they won by 50? I'm not really sure, but something we've been talking
Texas
about
A&M
for a
won with
while.
41 whenever they fired Jimbo after beating Mississippi State. So I'm going to go out on a limb and guess no,
I
it
guess so.
wouldn't.
It didn't really matter. Bye week coming up, and
Yeah.
then they'll get Georgia. Will be really interesting to keep our eye on Florida, and then of course Colorado State. We've talked about on show previously that Jay Norvell struggling this year at Colorado State and things not going the way they were hoping for there. Also being fired. Are there any thoughts from your end on that going forward? Do we expect about you? I mean, you called last week a pretty decent little bounce back at UAB. I believe that was in the after show. We talked about being worried about backing Memphis as good as Memphis has been this year. You were like, that one might actually have a little bit of a bounce back. So, if you have any thoughts here about these two coaches fired.
I would just say tread lightly, especially with maybe not so much Colorado State, but I say Florida, like tread lightly, because that team has a lot of talent that could bounce back, and not necessarily because, you'll be shocked to hear me say this, but I don't think Trent Dilfer was a very good coach at UAB. And so, I think there were other issues there. Obviously, I don't think Napier was necessarily a bad coach, but the situation had just gotten to the point where they, in my opinion, constantly felt like they were on pins and needles, both the coaching staff and the players, feeling like they kind of had to, be absolutely perfect. And, I'm sure there was some anxiety with trying to perform that well. So, just kind of having that release and being able to play a little bit looser, I could definitely see Florida coming out and playing really well the back half of their season.
All right, before we get to it here, Cousin Jared, one thing that caught your eye, what's one big thing that matters to sports bettors going forward, looking back on week 8 before we turn our attention to week 9?
Well, and we hadn't talked about this before, but I was going to go exactly where you just led us to, which was UAB, and say, hey, whenever you may have a lackluster coaching situation, or just a situation that has run its course and things are just kind of dead in the water, and you make a change, you really never know what you're going to get after that. And so as we go through the rest of the season, how many other coaches are you hearing rumors about now, whether it's, Norvell at the other Norvell at Florida State, or, some people are saying that LSU, things are looking bad there, or, all of these other coaches that we can go up and down the list. I think that you just have to be careful because each situation is unique. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know, the best way to respond in each situation. But I think it's definitely going to be something to have to keep tabs on, because I think we're going to see a lot more jobs open before the regular season comes to an end.
I think it's a great reminder for us because Jared, sometimes with these coaches fired, especially the week after, maybe even the rest of the season, when you talk about something like UAB, be a little bit careful. The model doesn't have a variable for coach fired and bounce back, because for every situation like this, and obviously UCLA is the one everyone's already thought about, I have to say it or else someone in the
Right.
comments, like, yes, we know, obviously it's another one. There's a situation where the coach fired doesn't really change anything. Right as we saw, Penn State did cover against Iowa, but wasn't able to get the win, which is obviously disappointing for them. And so sometimes we look back as sports bettors and we regret the bets we didn't make that won, but it's very easy to regret those in hindsight. Sometimes it is better to just not play it because, rather than taking 2 games that you bet you go 1-1, if you go 0-0, you actually did better off than going 1-1 unless you're playing plus odds of the money line. So it is okay to be cautious in some of these situations, even if we might have reason to do one thing or the other. Sometimes that coaching variable is one that's a little bit of an added mystique that is a little bit harder to wrap your brain around. And sometimes you just say, I don't really know what's going on, and it might be better off passing. Cousin Jared, the one thing I wanted to point out, Sam Houston State is bad,
Mm-hmm.
bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We took UTEP. They were in 8th grade and on the road, and that really was never in doubt. UMass is still not the runaway in last place according to Sideline, but Sam Houston is closer than they should be at second to last. And it is a massive gap. There's actually a bigger gap between Sam Houston at 135 to 134 than there is Sam Houston 135 to UMass at 136. So folks, so something to keep in mind there, and that Sam Houston was so good last year, lost the coach, lost the entire defense basically, and has having a really rough time. So they're at the bottom of the barrel there, but don't lose sight of that. Sometimes there is money to be made on bad teams, and we talk about that
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
often.
As we always say, you don't have to watch it. Nobody is forcing you to watch some of these games.
And there's one today I'm specifically going to beg you, viewer, not to watch. I'm looking forward to that one. How it works here, Sideline, in case you're curious, is the name of the models that I've built. I've built a model for various sports. Call them all Sideline. They are player based. Every number reflects today's roster that has to do with injuries, transfers, sitting out, all sorts of stuff. Mostly at this point, it's really just injuries, of course. Higher player grades or team grades implies more points, so that's good for offense, bad for defense. The models and ratings are predictive and forward facing. What that means, of course, is not this is not a reflection, especially when you get to this time of the season. This is not a reflection of how well the team has played. It's a reflection of how well we think they're going to play tomorrow. And those are often correlated, but they are not always 100% correlated. Grades are based on the probabilistic edge at the time of posting. We posted these picks for our people on Patreon in the afternoon or the early evening, late afternoon here on Sunday. We're recording this on Sunday night. By the time you're watching this, some of these numbers might have moved. The numbers might be better. They might be worse. The grades might change based off of being better or worse. In general, we advocate plays are plays. Don't stress too much. Always shop around, of course, and find the best number and the best easy way to think about it. A's are love, B's are likes, or lean, C's are little or no value. And if you want to get information on every single game, you can do that over on Patreon. You can also get access to our exclusive Discord chat with experts across every sport, more picks across every sport. And again, we always talk about there are no such thing as locks in sports betting, folks. You can get a lot of free picks out there. We're going to give you several of them today. But the idea that we try to do here, and if you get the full package of everything we offer over on Patreon, the idea is that we are emphasizing, just as the pros do, value, that the long-term value is where it is at. And again, been just a ho-hum year. We kind of talk about it every week, just kind of trudging along, haven't really had that breakout week to get things going as well as we'd like. But in the long run, we still trust that the process works, even though it's been a little bit of a frustrating season for us here, especially relative to our past two seasons. Because Jared, we'll start off, we'll have 3 spotlight games again, one for each time slot. The noon spotlight, Ole Miss at Oklahoma. Because Jared, Oklahoma's defense very good, their offense being their question mark. Ole Miss offense good, their defense. You mentioned this previously, something that we've backed in previous years. We've actually been a little bit on an island taking some of these Ole Miss unders in previous years because their defense has been so good. This year, their defense a little bit lagging. Something's got to give here. And the books are pretending, acting as if this game is going to be a little bit more on the defensive end. Sideline thinks it'll be actually a little bit more on the offensive end. The average projected total, more around 53 or so, is kind of where we've been sitting this year. We're going to go over 51. That's an A grade. Sideline says 55.5. So just a little bit more on the higher scoring than lower scoring side. A little bit of pace from Ole Miss. Oklahoma, pretty average pace. Because in Jared, Oklahoma's defense is really good. But with the pace and the style of play that Lane Kiffin likes to play, we're going to go over just the extent of that A grade. And of course, would be remiss if we didn't mention key numbers in the low 50s, 51 and 52. We get the push on one, the win on the other. That's what makes this an A grade. Because in Jared, tell us more.
Yep. I think at least I know, I probably overreacted a little bit to the Oklahoma offensive performance against Texas, and just knowing, hey, Texas has a really good defense. Mateer coming back from a broken hand like 3
like
weeks
2
later.
weeks, way sooner than he should have.
Something ridiculous. And so I was actually pretty impressed with them going to South Carolina and doing what they did this past weekend offensively. It wasn't fireworks, but we know that South Carolina has a pretty stout defense. I think Ole Miss especially, I mean, we talked about it at the top of the show, them being up in the fourth quarter and finding a way not to cover, getting a touchdown against Georgia last week. This Ole Miss defense is maybe not what it was in years past. It's just another half step down. I think Oklahoma at home, Mateer getting more healthy, I think that steps up Oklahoma's defense a little bit. And also, Ole Miss going back-to-back weeks coming off Georgia, a little bit of a body blow spot here. I think Oklahoma's offense does enough in this one to get us over the 51. I think I would also play this at 52. 52.5 is where you would probably lose me on this.
All right, that's good. Good to know there. Thank you for that. I think your point is spot on. That's exactly how I see it too, with regards to coming off of that Georgia game, a game that ended up with 80 points almost, I think just shy of 80, something like that. And when you have a team who struggles offensively coming off a game like that, it might lead to weaker offensive line play, struggling running back play, banged up quarterback, that sort of thing. But when you have a team like Ole Miss who wants to play faster and has a weaker defense, that's probably going to turn into more of a shootout, a little bit more lackluster on the defensive end. It's one of those body blows, hurts you more where you're already weaker. And Ole Miss is already weaker on the defensive end. And that's exactly what OU needs offensively in order to get this game a little bit high scoring. Obviously, Lane's going to do everything in his power to get it over for us. And so hopefully we can get the over 51 A grade play here. And just SEC just continuously having great games that they have to slot at noon because there's just so many games week in and week out. 3:30 p.m. Eastern, another great SEC contest, Missouri at Vanderbilt. Cousin Jared, Missouri is a fascinating situation here. They didn't beat Alabama, but maybe should have. They beat Auburn, maybe shouldn't have. So a little bit of a crisscross situation there. Sideline has loved Vanderbilt. We've been backing Vanderbilt left and right and mostly making money. And for the first time that I can remember, Sideline says not so fast in backing Vanderbilt. Says this is a pretty coin toss game. Sideline says 52%. That is well within the margin of error in a 50-50 contest, even though Missouri's on the road. Sideline thinks they're the slightly better team because we've been backing Vanderbilt. We've been loving Vanderbilt, touting them all season long. Last year as well, I think we wrote him a lot. Diego Pavia has been our boy from back in his days at New Mexico State, almost from the very start. And yet, Sideline here saying coin toss game, you got to take the plus odds with Missouri because I hate fading Vanderbilt here, but an A grade on the Tigers in a coin toss. And honestly, I don't know about you. You know more about the SEC. I'll defer to you on this one, but I look at the SEC and all these top teams. There's three seemingly matchups every week, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'll take the plus odds. We're going to go 50-50 because nobody knows, and the plus odds make us money in the long run. And it seems like our bread and butter. Why not try it here? Missouri Tigers plus 126 in A grade for us. What's your
Couldn't say it any better myself. These two teams seem extremely comparable to me. Honestly, I think I would have Missouri slightly above Vanderbilt, but then, the game being played at Vanderbilt, so that negates that complete toss-up game. So yeah, I like the plus odds. Just in general, you're talking about the SEC having so many good teams. I think the difference this year is just that the SEC doesn't have any great team, and the teams that we consider the best are just the ones with the least glaring weaknesses, I think. And so this to me just completely falls in that category. Two completely equal teams. Just take the plus odds. It worked out for us in the Auburn game, even though we both thought Missouri was quite a bit better in that one. So let's do the same thing. Let's have another double overtime game here where Missouri comes out ahead at the end.
We've got Sideline's got Alabama as now the top of the SEC teams, but like I mentioned last week, it's going to shuffle every week because it's just a hodgepodge of very good teams, but no team that really differentiates itself quite like Ohio State has at the top. And so we're going to take Missouri here in the afternoon spotlight. And just like last week, we're going to go to the Big 12 for our evening spotlight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Houston at Arizona State, because Jared, we've both really liked what we've seen from Houston this year. Really, Fritz, you expected them to get better as the season went along, maybe even a little bit ahead of schedule here in what he's done. We're going to grab the 8.5 points. Arizona State, a very good team. Huge win this last week in the Instack. We'll talk about Tech later. Kudos to them for getting that done. Even though Baron Morton was out, I still don't take anything away from Arizona State because that's a great backup quarterback there. And so great job for them. Sideline says they still win by an average of 6 points. So this is not to say we think Houston's a better team. Arizona State's the better team. Sideline thinks so as well. And they're at home and they should win, but 8.5 is a little bit too much. A lot of ways Houston can muck this up, frustrate Arizona State. And Cousin Jared, neither one of these teams wants to play with a lot of tempo. Both of them want to really rely on their defense, on their ground games, that sort of thing, that old school kind of football. And that lends itself to a closer game. Doesn't mean Houston will cover, but getting 8.5 is good enough to get to the B grade territory for us in our evening spotlight. And a game with big Big 12 ramifications of the conference that just seemingly wide open after Tech's loss to the Sun Devils. What do you have for us?
Two things I love about this one. You mentioned the first one, Willie Fritz. The attitude that this team plays with, the way they like to play the game. it doesn't lend itself to a lot of blowouts either way. Really adept at keeping teams in games. So that's the first thing that I really like. And of course, the second thing is just the spot here. I mean, Arizona State coming off the game against Tech, one of the biggest games of the season for them. And now you've got Houston coming into the season, which of course they have been much better, or at least ahead of schedule from what we probably thought they were going to be. But at the same time, Arizona State is just, you're not going to be able to, kind of will that same level of concentration and focus and preparation for a team like Houston that you can for Tech. So I'm like you. I don't think Houston's going to win this game, but I definitely see it being like a 1-score game late. And I think it's just like, hey, let's just hang on and have Arizona State win by 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, and not, 10.
Yeah, because in your last 2 seasons, teams who have stormed the field are 3-31 against the spread in the following week.
Wow.
I just made that up. That's not true at all. I just
Okay.
totally made that up. But if somebody has that stat, I would love to hear it. It seems right, or close enough. We'll pretend it's close enough. Evening spotlight here, Big 12 action. We're going to take Houston plus 8.5 as a B grade. And we're about to have some fun because of Jared. The segments, I had a little fun with them. And so maybe a little bit even catching you off guard. We're going to start off with a double-A game here. For Batteries Baseball in double feeling games, there are multiple games. The model likes the side and the total, gives an A grade to both the side and the total. Friday night, 7 p.m., North Texas at Charlotte. We're going to lay the 27 with the Mean Green, an A grade. Sideline says they win by an average of 36.3. Because the model has an A grade on the side and the total. Our supporters over on Patreon have all the information about the total and what our play is for that. But we're going to focus here on the side, the laying the 27, because I've been loving this North Texas team all season. I've been saying they're much better than people realize. They haven't covered every single game. They had a disappointing game. I believe maybe Army, they took to overtime or something like that earlier in the season. That game against South Florida turned into a shootout, got a little bit wild. Things got away from them there, but I still think people aren't realizing how good North Texas is. In Charlotte, I feel like the wheels have fallen off for Charlotte.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is more about the model and me loving North Texas and saying they've been really good to us, or how much this is about, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Charlotte just is broke. And so we're going to just keep on fading them for the time being. Because Jared, what's your take?
Charlotte fired their athletic director. There are bigger issues in the athletic department there, that not anything like bad or anything. Just, the situation is not good overall.
Just disarray.
Yeah. And the football team is just a subset of that. I was very impressed with North Texas this past weekend because I was concerned that loss to South Florida could have carried over into this past weekend and caused themselves to lose 2 games instead of just losing 1 game. And that was not the case at all. UTSA is a flawed team for sure, but it's still a team that could take advantage if you're not playing at the top of your game. And North Texas gave them no opportunity to ever really be in that game. So I'm love what I've seen from North Texas, kind of echoing what you've said. And yeah, the wheels have come off at Charlotte. The thing I love about this is laying a number like 27. I can't tell you how many times this season North Texas has been up by multiple touchdowns and still snapping the ball with, 24, 25, 26 seconds left on the play clock. They can't help themselves. And so I think that's exactly what we're going for here.
They are doing exactly what I would do if I was the head coach of a program like that, where, if it's late in the game, you slow it down and you try to preserve the win. But if it's not, you don't just try to slow things down to slow things down.
Right.
You have a good offense. You go out there, you do your thing, and you want to make a point, because this is a lot of us recruiting, right? You've got to go out there and get the recruits. You've got to get the respect. You've got to get someone on ESPN talking. I'm not saying you run up the score intentionally, but I'm saying you go out there and you do what you do and you be impressive and you don't take your foot off the gas, because there's no mercy in this. And so you play your game, and they're doing that to a T. They've had a couple times this season, as you mentioned, and they keep playing. And so there's a lot of times you're a little bit worried about laying a big number like this, because you just don't know how the end's going to go. They keep playing. They're trying to get the respect that I think they deserve. And so again, doesn't mean it will hit. It just means that the model says this seems more likely to land more like 35 than 28. And even if it does land 28, laying 27, we're on the right side of a couple kind of key numbers, as key as they can be out here in the upper 20s. Conjured a segment that we've had a couple times. The "You sure about that" segment? South Florida at Memphis. South Florida has been a team that everybody has loved. Memphis just got beat by hapless UAB, and the
Yeah.
model says Memphis wins 56% of the time. Are you sure about that? And I say, yeah, I still love this Memphis team. And I still think South Florida is good, not great. We backed South Florida last week as a B grade, and it worked out really well for us. But here the model says that this is one of our favorites, the WTF wrong team favored game. And getting plus 134 on Memphis at home is too good to pass up. And I think my stance on South Florida is not drastically dissimilar than my stance on Florida State has been all season. I've just been proven right much sooner with Florida State when I said at the beginning, hey, it's one game. Let's chill about that. Let's see how the model views them, and was like, maybe we shouldn't put them top 10. And the model said the same thing about South Florida after a couple of those big wins. Still has them up to number 42. I think that's still pretty good from where they're coming from. I just think that if they're going to actually be favored in this game like they are, that would imply they're a top 30 team.
Right.
And I think they're good. I just don't think they're that good. I don't know what happened to this game. This isn't to say Memphis is for sure the better team. Southern has them ranked literally next to each other, saying it's a dead heat. But Memphis at home, plus odds, just too good to pass up in a game that I can see going either way. Cousin Jared, Memphis plus 134. Are you sure about that?
Yes, I am sure about that. First thing, let's just pretend like that Memphis game against UAB didn't happen. And I'm
sure they'd love
yes,
to.
but I'm not saying that from the perspective of, that we shouldn't make a little bit of a judgment off Memphis on that. But clearly, of what happened with the UAB coach, this was a look ahead spot for Memphis with this South Florida game coming up. The other thing is, we've already talked about it. Maybe Trent Dilfer wasn't that great of a coach, but also not really knowing how you were going to prepare. I believe Dilfer was calling plays, and so we got a new play caller on offense for UAB. There was just so many unknowns coming into that game that, yes, you need to weight it, but you need to weight it appropriately. And I think where this line is at, it's an overreaction to what we saw with Memphis last week. On the flip side, South Florida, yes, they've got the win against Florida, who has since fired their coach. And they also had the win over North Texas. And 100% South Florida should have won that game. North Texas had 3 or 4 turnovers? Five turnovers.
5 turnovers
in that game. And so, yes, South Florida should have won. It should have been much closer than it actually ended up being.
It should have been the coin toss game we expected.
Yes. And so all of those things combined, I think that you have got I don't want to say gross overreaction, because we've been, we found out we can be wrong this season. But this does feel like much of an overreaction. Worst case, I think this is 50-50. So sure, as always, give us the plus odds.
I think that there's something to be said here for something we say a lot, which is you're never as good as you look at your best. You're never as bad as you look at your worst. Love backing a team when they've looked worse than than we know they are in Memphis. And what I'll say about South Florida is simply this: their wins have looked better on paper than I think. And this is I don't have a vendetta against them. I don't have any reason to dislike them. I don't know anyone who went there and have a distaste for them or anything.
Yeah.
But it's not a disrespect. It's simply to say, I feel like I'm seeing a good team, but the wins they look so much better on the final score and the names and the headlines. And I just think they're getting some good breaks. And sometimes teams go the whole season getting good breaks. And if I'm a South Florida fan, I'm thrilled about those big breaks. You can't take those wins away. And I'm not trying to. It's just going forward, I'm just not sure they're going to continue to get kind of some of the same turnover luck, for instance.
Yeah.
If they do, then that's the hill I'm going to die on. The hill I'm going to die on is I just don't think they can keep up the good luck. And if they can, kudos to them.
Yep. Crazy turnover luck in that first game of the season against Boise, too. Just 2 games off the top of my head.
Well, and fourth down luck, right? And they got that fake punt right off of Boise.
Yeah.
And that Florida game was so weird. Again, they're a good team. Southern is at number 42 for the American. That is a very good ranking there. It's no disrespect to them. It's just I think both them and Memphis are both very good, and I'm getting plus odds with the home team. If I was getting plus odds with South Florida, it might be a little bit of a different story, even though the model does think Memphis should be favored because, again, toss-up game, but then the home edge there. Because, real quick, I want to divert to huge implications for the AAC for this game. When you look at the conference standings and the overall standings, there are 5 teams at the top that, if they were to win the American Conference and continue with their dominance on the season, could vie for the playoff, depending on exactly what else happens in other conferences. We've seen some of the other top teams in other conferences struggle with some losses already as well. So, I mean, the winner of the American can have a great shot at it. If Memphis loses this game, they're probably out of the playoff discussion. They're probably out of the discussion for making the conference championship game. Must win for them. South Florida, on the other hand, could survive a loss, but would throw them in the thick of things. South Florida 3-0, Tulane 3-0, Memphis and North Texas both 2-1 in conference, and all 4 of those teams 6-1. Because, Jared, I don't know if you know this, but the leader of the American, I guess just the American now, as we're calling it, Navy, 4-0 in conference.
4-0 in conference, 6-0 overall. Yeah, one of the only undefeated teams left. Yeah.
A little bit of a softer schedule. Caught me off guard. I'm not sure they can really hang in there, but so far they've had an impressive season. This next one I'm calling Cousin Jared Hearts the Sun Belt, because he does. App State and Old Dominion. We're going to go over 62 as a B grade. This is one where we talk about key numbers here. 62, really your key number in the low 60s. 63 could be, because in a game with that many points and that many scores, it's hard to have too many field goals. So one that would have to be more touchdown dominated. B grade here would prefer 61.5, but as long as we're 61.5, 62, not a bad idea to go over in a game that is not going to be lacking in pace. Because, Jared, you're our Sun Belt guru, so I'll let you take it from here.
App State games this season, the final scores have been 22-38, 47-14. They had one against Oregon State that only got to 50 points. But then 41-20, 45-37. And the thing is that Old Dominion has played in plenty of those games themselves. Old Dominion has, if not the best offense in the Sun Belt, definitely one of the top ones. One of the best quarterbacks in all of the non-Power 4 teams. I see this one being just like, the last handful of App State's games. I think Old Dominion's going to win this one pretty handily, and I think they're going to score over 40 points, and I think App State does enough, get us to 21, 24, something like that, that gets us over in this one.
Colton Joseph, the quarterback for Old Dominion, barely the second-rated quarterback in the Sun Belt, almost to the top. Him and Brad Jackson of Texas State are battling out for first place, according to Sideline. But you mentioned Old Dominion offensively, one of the top ones, the third-rated offense, according to Sideline, in the conference. But when you pair the third-rated offense with a pace that high, you're going to get a lot of points. So they're doing a lot of things there to score points there at Old Dominion.
And something I should have said, App State also with the high pace, but the problem is their defense much worse than Old Dominion.
Much worse. Gone are the great days of App State having a great defense, unfortunately. Fourth, and still in the noon Eastern time slot, run, don't walk. Virginia and North Carolina, Virginia -9. Cousin Jared, we have a lot of these numbers we talk about. Why do we want to get them early? And so rather than go through and just say, hey, here's a bunch of good numbers, folks, key numbers, we want to highlight specifically in this one. Why is this one that you want to get out ahead of here? Sideline says 17, so very much a case to be made for you're looking at the wrong key number. But anytime you can get the single digits in a game that could be a runaway like this, you can't pass it up. Cousin Jared, do you foresee this getting higher given some of the questions of what's going on?
I do foresee this getting higher, and I want to grab it before it gets out to 10. Look at that North Carolina offense. That is just not good. And the thing is if Virginia gets ahead in this game, I just don't know what North Carolina has in the bag to keep it from getting out of control, because I don't think their offense is efficient enough to string together first downs. Their defense hasn't been good enough to come up with big stops. I mean, we know we've talked at least the media has talked ad nauseum about North Carolina and their struggles this season. I could take an argument that Virginia didn't look great against Washington State. I will acknowledge that. However, it's also possible maybe Washington State has just found a little something over these past couple of weeks playing
I was thinking that.
playing Ole Miss well, playing Virginia well. Really wish for their sake they would have won one of those games. That would have helped them a lot, but losing both of them, but playing admirably in both games. I'm going to say that was probably more Washington State, I think, than Virginia. So I think Virginia comes out, gets ahead early, and then North Carolina just doesn't really have a way to respond.
Underrated point, the travel for North Carolina back across the country from Cal,
Mm-hmm.
that Friday night late game, a game they hung in there, played really well, might have been their best game of the season.
Yeah.
There's going to be a narrative coming out of this game either way. If North Carolina were to play well again, maybe even win, you're going to say, oh, that game against Cal was the turning point, got them going in the right direction. Because, in Jared, I think the other side of that coin is more likely, which is that was just there's been a lot of talk about the coach and everybody kind of rah-rahed together and played a great game on the road. But then you come back and at some point there's still a reality of you're not a very good football
Yep.
team. Cal, according to Sideline, ranked number 77, is a whole lot of a different story than playing number 38 Virginia.
Yep.
And this Virginia team, like you said, didn't look great last week, but we saw them against Stanford in that game a few weeks ago, just couldn't be stopped. And I kind of think I've seen enough from North Carolina to say, unless something's changed, I kind of think we're going to see the same thing.
Yep.
Like you said, Carolina, if they get down, they're just not going to be able to stop them. And so I think it's more likely that we talk about road trip back home. They fought well, but in the end of the day, this still isn't a great team. There's still a lot of problems from the top down, and Virginia has a good chance to win this one big. So I'm going to get things by about 17. Because we always say you don't got to watch them to make the monies. I'm going to go a step further and say, please don't watch this game. Rutgers and Purdue. Rutgers somehow has an offense now, and their defense is atrocious. Purdue, they will probably get going in the right direction. We like that coaching hire. After that Northwestern game, I'm going to just say it's not going to be this season. It's going to be a true year one, true year zero type thing. That happens. That's no disrespect there. Again, we think they might be heading in the right direction. But for now, these are two football teams that just aren't very good. Sideline has them both slightly below average. And there's just a lot more happening at noon. Folks, please don't watch this game. But we do think Purdue plus odds makes some sense there at home, and neither one of these teams is worth a darn.
Yeah.
Because hopefully we get a little bounce back from Purdue after that terrible Northwestern performance. Hopefully they're not as bad as they looked at their worst. Right?
Exactly. And for me, this is all about the Rutgers defense. And Washington, when was that? A week ago, I guess, 9 days ago now. Washington, or was it earlier this week? I don't even remember. Earlier last week. Okay.
That was week 7.
So Rutgers or Washington basically spotted Rutgers a whole quarter. It was like, hey, we're not going to do anything offensively for a quarter. And Washington still ended up scoring 30-something points. The Rutgers defense completely fell apart in the second and third quarters of that game. This play for me is strictly based on this Rutgers defense is going to find a way to play at least 2 terrible quarters of football, maybe 3. And so I think Purdue's going to score enough to keep it close. I definitely want the plus odds in this one. I don't know what the spread is. I don't want to mess with the spread because, Rutgers, you see they got a number 44 offense. They can score some points. So this one, Rutgers could end up winning this one by, a touchdown or 10 points or something. But I just want the plus odds against this terrible Rutgers defense. And again, just a sign of what has happened in college football in 2025, that we're complimenting Rutgers offense and talking about how terrible their defense is.
This to me reeks of people correctly realizing that Rutgers has a good offense. People rightly seeing what Purdue did against Northwestern. It's not a good football team. And people looking at Rutgers giving up 56 last week into Oregon and giving them a pass. And in general, I would give you a pass for giving up 56 to Oregon. But the problems are much deeper than that. I don't think you can give them a pass for that. Their defense I think people are looking at what Rutgers defense has been in the past. And we've said it all season. If Rutgers had a decent defense like they've had in years past with this offense, they'd make some noise in the Big Ten, likely make a bowl game, probably have one random upset win that we would all be surprised about. But at this point, that defense is just really getting in their way because it's not getting in the way of their opponent nearly enough.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they'll win or lose. Again, Purdue, not a good football team. This is all about, hey, neither one of these teams is good, and you got plus odds on the home team. Why not? Yep. Because, if this is Purdue even money, not worth the investment. But plus 118, why not?
Yep.
Because who the heck knows when you get to, especially for Big Ten standards, pretty rough football. Yep. That does it for the noon slate. 3 p.m. Eastern. Kind of want to highlight one of these as we go down the stretch here. The sneaky good G5 game that might fly under your radar. Your San Diego State and Fresno State, both already with 5 wins of the season. We've got San Diego State winning this by an average of 5.6. They've been really good to us. Only a B grade here, but we're going to lay the 1.5. Cousin Jared, Fresno's been a little bit up and down this season. San Diego State, though, going in the right direction. We think it's a good chance to go on the road. What I like about this is there's a lot of tough places to play in the Mountain West if you are one of the teams not at altitude. For San Diego State, that involves, half the teams in the conference. But going to Fresno State, at least they won't have to deal with crazy travel situation. A little bit of an in-state rivalry game. He'll relay the 1.5 with San Diego State. Cousin Jared, you heart the Sun Belt. You also heart the Mountain West. So I'll let you have the final say.
One of my favorite plays of the weekend. I think we're gonna talk about one of the other ones coming up pretty soon as well. But for me, this is what have you done for me lately? And Fresno State, something happened to them at the halftime of the Nevada game. They just haven't been the same. San Diego State, I mean, they have just been heading in the right direction all season, and they've played well as of recent. So for me, this is just, I think San Diego State is still kind of on an upward trajectory or is plateauing, and I think Fresno State, we usually say, have we seen the bottom? Not in the context of a team that already has 5 wins at this point, but it has just been so stark the last 6 quarters of football from Fresno State that I just wonder, something's got to change because they can't keep getting worse. But love laying the 1.5 here. The San Diego State team has looked really good the past month or so.
Yeah, and it's been a week. They were off here this last week, but Fresno State losing 49-21 to Colorado State, who then the next week fires their coach. So this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, Fresno State's got 5 wins, and this is a team that's got, aspirations of making it to the conference championship game, not Mountain West. This is kind of one of those, losers are going to have a really tough time making it type situations. But while there are conference championship game implications on the line, unless something happened at Fresno in that bye week to turn things around, the end of their dreams, of making the cup might be over. But San Diego State's dreams seemingly intact, always tough to win on the road, but we think they can get it done for us. We say there's sometimes when you want to run, don't walk. There's times where you want to walk, don't run. This is one of those. Illinois +5. If the number gets a little bit worse, so be it. Saturday night season is a coin toss game. Always tough to travel, halfway across the country at this point of the season. At least for them, it's not the full, Rutgers to Washington trip. It's only Illinois, it's only halfway across the country. But a 3:30 game, so a 12:30 Eastern, or sorry, a 3:30 p.m. Eastern, a 12:30 p.m. local time start. So an early start for Washington. They typically don't play them this early. Should feel a little bit more like a normal time for Illinois. So that maybe offsets some of the home field edge from Washington. 2 teams that are good, not great, better on offense than defense. We've just got Illinois is slightly better, and thus makes it more of a coin toss. But the books would have you think Washington is the better team. Because, Jared, you don't think that's the case. Tell us more.
With each passing week, well, first of all, Illinois had a bye week last week. I think that'll help with some of the adjustment as well. Washington, potential body blow game coming off. Michigan, we know how they like to play, kind of really got to be tough in the trenches. Illinois, another team that'll kind of wear you down in that regard. But this Illinois team, with each passing week, or every passing week's not the right word, but with each additional data point that is collected, you see, yes, the loss to Indiana that Illinois had 63-10 certainly is not good, but only losing to Ohio State 34-16. That looks good. The more data points we collect with how Ohio State's played and everything else, Illinois, I think, is a really solid team. I think I was a little disappointed in Washington. I expected them to keep the game against Michigan a little bit closer than they did. They have a victory over Colorado State earlier this season, fired their coach. They have a victory over Rutgers this season. We saw what we just talked about how bad Rutgers defense was. They have a win over Maryland that somehow they should not have had. And so I think this Washington team might be a little bit of a mirage. And this Illinois team, yes, they got trounced by Indiana. They lost to Ohio State, but those teams are number 1 and number 2 right now. So I don't really know how bad you can feel for Illinois. This one just seems to be multiple points off to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think for me, I know what I'm getting with Illinois is they're good, not great. And you saw it. I mean, they compete. They get, uh, in my opinion, I'm seeing their good performance against Ohio State, for lack of a better word, and their terrible performance against Indiana almost as on average. Like, let's average them together and think about it, right? They got beat handily by the top 2 teams in the country. Okay, whatever. Who hasn't, right? They're not good enough to hang with them, but I think they're good enough to hang with most of the rest of the conference, maybe Oregon aside. When you look at Washington, I'm just not impressed. I know they only lost 24-6 to Ohio State, but that was at home in a game we talked about. We had the under in that when Ohio State just wanted to go out there across the country and get the win and move on, and Washington never stood a chance.
Right.
You mentioned it, like you said, that if they were going to be good, I feel like they had to do more last week against Michigan. I mean, we talked about this Michigan offense having some still glaring concerns despite the new quarterback and the play calling and just, not even competing in that game. I'm not saying that they can't compete in this one. At home, I'm sure they will compete. Again, Sideline says it's pretty 50-50, but the books are treating this as if Washington's one of these good Big Ten teams. And I'm like, I'm just not convinced they're that good.
Yep.
Maybe I'm wrong, but they sure didn't show me anything here this last week.
Yep.
So we're going to grab the 5 with Illinois. Walk, don't run. If it gets to 6 to 7, I have no idea where this number is going to go. It's in a no man's dead land spot, whatever you want to call it right now. It might drop to, down. If it drops to 4, grab it at 4, If it gets up to 6, 7, hey, maybe a little extra value there, because again, this is going to be could easily be a close game. Washington does not want to play with any pace, and Illinois has played with a whole lot more pace this year, better offense and defense, but knows how to play in close games as well. So the more points, the merrier that you can grab at this one. So no rush to grab the 5. We'll lock it in as an official pick at 5, but as long as you're getting some points here, it makes a lot of sense. A grade there. Because when is a B grade? In the A grade, the answer would be in this game. Temple at Tulsa, we've got Temple -6 as a B grade. A grade on the total that we're actually going to pass on. Instead, we're going to lay the 6 with Temple. Casey Keeler at Temple has really got them going in the right direction. We've been talking about it here on either the main show or the after show here for the last couple of weeks. Their defense somehow is lagged, which has surprised me given what he did at Sam Houston State last year. But Temple's moving in the right direction and looking pretty solid here, especially relative to what we thought they were coming into the season. Again, not to say they're the best team out there, but up to number 75, again, moving the right direction here. Everything, you have to be really pleased if you're a Temple fan, thinking that you've got a coach in a situation as good as you had it back when you had Matt Rule. Tulsa, on the other hand, offensively challenged, and so might be the week to get Casey Keeler's defense going in the right direction. We're laying the 6 with Temple. Sideline says they win by an average of about 11. Since you're an A grade on the total, but we're going to play the B grade on the side. What do you love about this one?
I'll tell you what I like about this one. Tulsa's pace, because I think they will keep this game moving quick enough to allow Temple to cover this number. Temple has been really good to us this season, but they remind me a little bit of UConn from the perspective of I am much more comfortable laying a short number with them or taking them as a dog than I am with laying a number like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or something like that. But in this instance, I think that pace from Tulsa really helps us to get out there and cover a number like this. Yeah, and maybe we knew that Keeler was a good coach, but maybe seeing what happened with Sam Houston now, which we know they lost so many players in the transfer portal, but maybe he was even better than
a bunch of them to Temple.
Yeah, and so maybe he was an even better coach than what we realized. So Temple, this is just a team I love these types of teams where they're just flying under the radar, really good against the spread each week. And I'm just going to kind of keep riding them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there, especially in some of these smaller conferences. There's some teams that are kind of like, I think San Diego State, we talked about earlier, could be classified as the same thing. Kind of flying under the radar. People don't realize, they're playing some pretty good football right now. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's kind of keep riding it until the wheels fall off.
Yep.
Laying the 6 here. This is also, for me, a kind of run, don't walk situation. I'm afraid this gets out to 7. And by game day, it wouldn't surprise me if there's enough money on the 7, enough liability there on the 7 that the books don't offer some 7.5 to try to get some buyback. I'm not sure who's going to be buying back at 7.5 because Tulsa's like you
Yeah.
said, the
Yeah.
pace, there will be opportunities for this game to be a double-digit game. And there's times when that's not necessarily the case, and you worry with the game involving Temple if there's going to be enough possessions, if you're just going to run a game against the clock kind of thing.
Right.
Tulsa's going to give us enough chances. Doesn't mean that it'll work for Temple, but they will have their chances to make this a double-digit game. Also at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, Cousin Jared made me. Toledo at Washington State. We've talked about Washington State as a team that's moving in the right direction. I don't know what to make of them. Toledo's a team that we backed last week, getting back in the right direction. We've said with Toledo, maybe we've learned our lesson with them. Don't back them as a big road favorite because they tend to play with their food. They're on the road here, but not as a big favorite, as a slight dog. This is kind of a big game for them. Not that it has any conference implications, but hey, a big road game in the middle of the season against a former Power 5 team, a chance to really make your mark here and say, we are as good as these other teams. We are deserving to make a bowl, that sort of thing. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this one? Plus odds on Toledo. Sideline says they win 71% of the time, but if Washington State's playing a little bit better, maybe the true number should be more in the 60s and maybe not quite that high. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I would say on this one that Toledo, I just can't figure them out, but I think they are better than this Washington State team. I'll take them as a dog at plus 106 with the plus odds here. I know it's on the road, which, I'm sure not the easiest travel spot from Ohio out to Washington, but at some point, I think for Washington State, the game at Ole Miss, the game at Virginia, I mean, that's just two big back-to-back weeks for them. And then they're coming back home, but you got
and big travel.
Yeah, big travel, and now you're coming back with Toledo, who, even though they're year in and year out one of the best teams in the MAC, a team that still does not get the respect I think that they deserve. Don't know how Jason Candle still has that job and hasn't been hired to go somewhere else. But I think this is just another thing where it's the spot, like the back-to-back heartbreaking losses for Washington State on the road, traveling back. It's just, I don't know, man. This seems like a toss-up game. Again, I want the plus odds in that situation.
I think for me, if Washington State wins this game, there will be people who watch this show who will say Toledo has struggled on the road. Washington State's been playing better. How did you not see it coming? The model is here again, is more right than wrong, wins in the long run, doesn't win every single game, unfortunately, and is trying to tell us in this game, hey, maybe don't overthink it. And that's going to be the thing. If Toledo does go out and win this game, they are the better team. The model thinks by a good bit. And if they go out there and do their thing and say, even though Washington State's not, I mean, they are part of the Pac-12, I guess, but the Pac-12 doesn't mean anything anymore. But even though this isn't one of those, we've got a chance to beat up on the big boys, it still kind of is a chance to beat up on the big boys, at least a little bit on the, in a big travel spot, again, not a game that has conference implications, but a lot of pride involved, like you said, the spot for Washington State. And the model's just trying to say, hey, just don't overthink it yet. Now, if Washington State wins this game, the model will probably adjust pretty heavily after 3 straight impressive weeks from Washington State and Toledo if they struggle to get on the road. So could be some big adjustments coming if Washington State gets a job done. But at least for now, the model's saying, all right, let's sometimes we think too much and we just need to go back to who's the better team.
Right.
In this case, it's Toledo. Plus odds, is the no-brainer there. Cousin Jared had multiple names for this segment. I'm going to go with Please Make It Stop. I also could have named it I Need More Clothes, because this Baylor team is just frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't want to steal the thunder of one of the maybe the prominent Baylor, Twitter account who kind of went on a tirade here recently. And I completely agree. The Baylor at this point isn't serious about football. And I wish they were, or I wish they just tell us we're not going to be. I've been on it all season. I've been at it from day one, game one. The coaching situation there is, it's just got to stop. We got to move on. The defense at number 73, because I didn't realize there are only 73 teams now in FBS, apparently. It is kind of how I'm seeing that. I mean, the defense is just atrocious, and they find themselves in holes week in and week out. And I'm happy that they battle out of them and make games competitive, but this team is just not that good. They should be so much better. They've got a great offensive coordinator and a pretty solid offense, and they're wasting another season because they have a defensive guru head coach who, coming out of the bye week, couldn't figure out how to stop TCU, give up 42 points. I'm so over this Baylor team. I would say I don't want to talk about this, but I still want to talk about how bad they are because A, it can help us make money, and B, maybe it can raise awareness and we can finally get on with our lives and get a better
I
coach.
love how you said you want to raise awareness. I feel like it's the fun run episode of The Office where he's like the fun run to raise awareness and the cure for rabies or whatever it was. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's raise the awareness there. Yeah. To your point, I don't trust this Baylor team, this Baylor defense specifically, going on the road and getting enough stops to cover this number. That's just about it. I don't know if the points come early. I don't know if the points come late. Knowing Baylor, they're probably going to come early for Cincinnati, and then Baylor's going to end up,
And
yeah,
late.
yeah, yeah, well, yeah, and Baylor, you're going to have to be, kind of holding on at the end that Baylor doesn't come back and only lose by, 3 or 4. But yeah, this is just one of those things. I think not that you see the writing on the wall with Baylor, but I think that the players are like, hey, this is kind of what we are at this point in the season. And at that point, it just kind of becomes more difficult to make the adjustments and make the changes that you need to make to fix some of their issues. So yeah, this is one of those things where I don't see them getting enough stops.
Yeah, Sideline says since he wins by an average of about 13. And this Cincinnati team's decent. Hats off to them. We were a little bit concerned about them coming into the season.
Yeah.
Didn't really love the coaching situation. They've had a great season. They're doing things. They're doing things really well there, and that offense is pretty good. And I kind of see this playing out a lot like the Iowa State game, to be honest. Cincinnati's probably going to get up early and look good to start with, and then it's just a question of can they hang on. This Baylor team, when they get down, does seem to put up a lot of offense and put up a lot of points. If this were to get out into the 7-8 range, it's a little bit scarier because we saw last week they were down, I believe, 21 to TCU and ended up only losing by 6. I can see something like that happening again. But laying a number less than 6 is just way too good to pass up.
Yep.
I'd lay it up to 7 pretty easily. Beyond that, I don't really know with this Baylor team because they're just so frustrating and so confusing. But what I do know is that defense is terrible and they can score some points, but I just don't see how Cincinnati's going to be stopped. And that we talked about Tulsa's pace earlier. Baylor's pace is the same thing. We're going to play so fast that it's going to give Cincinnati plenty of chances to score, and that offense is good enough. I think they're going to be taking them. It wouldn't surprise me if Cincinnati puts up a 40 spot just like TCU did last week. Cousin Jared, one of my favorite shows, The Good Place, I like to quote all the time. There's a scene there where Sheedy is talking and he's talking to Eleanor and he says, "You broke the world." And she starts to get excited. And he says, "Not a compliment." Well, this one is, "I think you broke the model." Because Oklahoma State, my goodness, has fallen into Sideline's bottom 10 for college football, by far the worst Power 5 team. We've been fading them week in and week out, and we're going to continue to do so because it continues to pay dividends. And Cousin Jared, Sideline says Tech wins this by an average of 52. I have never seen, I'm not sure it's happened, that Sideline has projected a conference game to be decided by more than 50 points. I feel like we are breaking the model here. We only have to lay 39, only a B grade, because the model's like, I don't know what the heck is happening out there. Don't have a lot of data on probabilities in this realm. And so we're not going to give it that A grade high confidence. But man, while Tech, struggled last week, came back, looked like they were going to get the impressive road win, but couldn't hang on. Still a very, very good team. Oklahoma State, still a very, very bad team.
Yeah.
As much as we want to talk about teams like UAB and UCLA getting a little bit of a bounce from the firing of the coach situation, look no further than Oklahoma State as a reminder that you don't always get that because things are still just terrible in Stillwater. Lubbock's a tough place to play, and this one's going to be over before it starts, in my opinion. Cousin Jared, just got to show up at this one. As long as they show up, they'll be fine. Do you think they can win by 52? What a projection. That's insane.
This does feel very, what was the score of the Oklahoma State Oregon game earlier this season? Was that one 62 to 3 or 65 to 3? I don't know what it was, but like this, I feel like this is that game all over again. And the fact that Texas Tech lost last week at Arizona State makes me want to lay the 39 even that much more. Even if, Morton's out again and it's Hammond, and Hammond is going, at home, obviously against a terrible Oklahoma State team. Hammond, I mean, you and I both think that he's a good quarterback. I think he's going to have a field day against Oklahoma State. Whoever plays, either Morton or Hammond, I think, they're going to have a field day. And yeah, this is one of those where I might be hesitant if Tech had come back and beat Arizona State, but the fact that they lost, I mean, I would probably lay like 42. Like, I don't think there's going to be field goals in this game. 42, sure. I'd lay it at 42 as well.
I think that you make a great point about Tech after losing to Arizona. Had they come back, had they held on for that win, that comeback win, and then you say, oh, yeah, backup quarterback on the road, team that played for the conference, team that won the conference last year, right? You could maybe say, oh, maybe a bit of a letdown spot. But we talked about North Texas earlier as a team that has mostly not played around with their food. Tech has been a team that has not really played around with their food either. No. And so coming off of that loss, I don't imagine they're going to be playing with their food. No. This number is way too. I think there's a little bit of there's going to be resistance on this number because there's going to be groups of people, groups of bettors who put money on big plus odds in conference games out of principle. And I respect that. But folks, they haven't seen this Oklahoma State
I was going to say,
it's just
that means they have not looked, not even like watched the game. You haven't looked at an Oklahoma State box score. Have you gone and looked? I mean, I think you brought this up at some point somewhere. It may have been on Discord, but how many players have thrown a pass for Oklahoma State so far this season?
It's like 8 or something ridiculous. I don't even know how that's possible.
Trying to figure out who's playing quarterback for Oklahoma State on a week-to-week basis is, it's not all Oklahoma State's fault.
It's a guy who was a wide receiver last year.
They've had injuries.
Is the guy playing?
It's not just coaching. It's not just all these things. They've had a lot of injuries too. It's just every single thing that could have gone wrong for Oklahoma State has gone wrong. And if you are taking the points with Oklahoma State in this spot, you just have not paid any attention at all.
I think last week, Oklahoma State actually played better than the final score indicates. They were only outgained by Cincinnati by about 50 yards.
That's pretty good for them.
That's pretty good for them. They gave up a bunch of points in the fourth quarter. That was a home game, and I kind of think that was almost like North Carolina. Talked about going to Cal, playing their good game come together game. To me, that was the home game. They played pretty well. I think going on the road now this week against the best team in the Big 12, I just think it's going to be back to, really, really rough times. And as much as I could say they looked better than their box score last week, there's been a lot of games where they haven't, where the box score has been exactly how they look. The final score has been exactly how they look. This is one of those. So a situation that we are just way out there. We typically don't love laying big numbers like this, especially in the non-conference early on. But I mean, just Oklahoma State team has just been the gift that keeps on giving. So why not continue to fade them? 7:30 p.m. Eastern. There are other night games, I guess. We covered one earlier. This is the only other night game we're going to give out here. We've got a bunch of other night game picks, a bunch of other picks for the full week and all this slot Saturday. Again, over on Patreon, you can join us there. But this is going to be our final game here of this free show. Michigan at Michigan State. We're going to lay the 13.5 with Michigan. Maybe showing a little bit of life last week. Do we believe that was more Michigan or more Washington? I'm not sure it matters because I'm just glad that for Michigan, they showed that they can win a game by double digits. They can put up a few points. That defense we know is still legit. And we saw Michigan State last week, really struggle to do anything against Indiana. Obviously, Indiana's a really good football team. This Michigan State team just isn't very good either. And I think they're going to struggle to do anything offensively against Michigan. A rivalry game, of course, so anything can happen. That bodes well for us potentially in that Michigan not going to let their foot off the gas. Could be a game where Michigan State plays above their head and hangs in there, absolutely. But if Michigan's actually going to do something, they did a little bit last week, maybe they can build on that and beat one of their rivals here on the road by 2 touchdowns. We're going to 13.5 with them. Be creative, as the model says. They win by an average of 17. Cousin Jared, of all the night games, we covered one of them earlier. This is one of the ones that we like. What do you like about this one?
This reminds me of all the years that you talked about Kansas and Kansas State and how Kansas State just wanted to demolish Kansas every opportunity they had. And I think Michigan is the exact same way. Michigan State hasn't won a conference game yet. They've played some of them close, but I don't know what it is about this rivalry that you had the couple of years before Harbaugh got to Michigan, and was it D'Antonio? D'Antonio was the coach at Michigan State, where Michigan State was able to win some of those games. But outside of that, this is just a game that year in and year out, even though Michigan has dominated the series, they get up for the game and they get on top, and they do not give Michigan State any opportunity to really do much at all. I think the biggest issue for me in this one is that I just don't see Michigan State's offense doing enough against this Michigan defense. 100%. I think this is probably going to be maybe a one score game at halftime. And I just think as the game wears on, Michigan State's going to get more and more, kind of worn down by that Michigan running game. And Michigan ends up winning this one by 2 touchdowns, 17, 20 points or something like that. I think Michigan State can hang around for a while, but I don't think they can hang with them for 4 quarters.
When you look back at this series, I believe it was 2021, Michigan State was ranked number 9 in the country, was able to win that game at home. That was a little bit of different because that was one of the best Michigan State teams that has existed here in recent history. Look at 2022, that Michigan team was obviously on a different level, destroyed Michigan State. I think we can throw that one out as well because no one was ever claimed that this Michigan team is at that level. Last year, Michigan was only able to win this game by a touchdown, but you look back, say, to 2019, the previous year that we can kind of look at here, where things were at least a little bit more normal. And you had a Michigan team that was ranked 18th and they won that game by 34. They went out and they took care of business. They didn't let the rivalry game of Michigan say, oh, they played better or whatever. They went out there and they said, we're the better team. And they went out and they took care of business. And so it's not to say I think they're going to win by 34. I think this Michigan team probably not as strong as the 2019 version. It's more to say kind of like you brought up a great point. I always mention about Kansas State. Which holds true, by the way, for Kansas State football and Kansas in basketball as well, in that rivalry, in a situation where, for the most part, Michigan, they get up, they take care of business when they're the better team, and that's the case here. They're the much better team. And so I think a lot of people will look at last year's game. They'll look at the fact that Michigan State is at home. They'll look at the fact that Michigan's had some questionable results this season and say, oh, maybe Michigan State can hang in there. And again, that's why we have the model, not to say we can predict exactly what will happen, but to say sometimes we don't want to overthink things. Michigan is the much better team, and even though it's a rivalry game, when Michigan's been the much better team, they've mostly done what they should. They should go out there and win by, like you said, 17, 21, something like that, 14. Maybe there's a backdoor. Maybe they don't cover this number. Not to say that it's a lock, but to say there's more ways that it wins than it loses, at least according to the model. That's our show. Thanks for watching. You can get more picks on Patreon. You can support the show for $4.99 a month and get access to our Discord chat. You won't be able to talk, but you will be able to see all the great interactions. They'll laugh at some jokes, get more picks, more insights there. You can get all the picks for $9.99 a month over on Patreon. You can get everything that I offer for $19.99 a month over there on the Honor Roll package on Patreon. Again, that link is in the show description. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Before we head out, Cousin Jared, parting words.
Everybody's friend Jake and I have a neck and neck season long bets going right now. It's going to be really close, just projecting forward. So stick in for the rest of the season to see who comes out on top of that. I have one loss that's already in the bag, but unfortunately, so does Jake, who had Penn State over 10.5 wins. So, we still have a ways to go here, but it's going to be a tight race down to the end of the season.
It will be. Looking right now, I was kind of messing around with how I felt the season would play out. Looking like good chance both of you can profit. Both of you, the last time we did this a couple of years ago, also profit. Yeah. So hopefully we can continue that little run. That's been a lot of fun. Again, we thank you for watching here on Picks of the Professor. And as we always talk about, want to remind you as we leave you off this week that as long as you keep the right mindset, have the right models, you can win more when you win than you lose when you lose. And that's what it's all about.